Welcome to Jay English. I'm Jay, your host. Thank you for listening. In this podcast, we will talk about prepositions. Do you know what prepositions are? They are small words, but they can be hard. English learners often struggle with them. Why is that? We will find out today. Prepositions show relationships. They tell us where, when, and how things happen. For example, on, in, at, and under are prepositions. They are simple, but tricky. Many people use them wrong. Why is it so difficult? Because prepositions don't always translate directly from one language to another. Let's look at an example. I am at the store. The preposition here is at. In many languages, this can be different. In some languages, you might use in instead of at. But in English, we use at for places like stores. This can be confusing for learners. Another example is on the table. Why do we say on? We use on when something is on top of a surface. But in other languages, they might say in the table or under the table. This is where the challenge comes. It's not always the same as in other languages. Prepositions can also be about time. For example, we say in the morning or at night. These time expressions are important, but they don't always match in other languages. In some languages, you might use the word for on or at instead of in when talking about time. Think about this. We say in the car, but we say on the bus. Why? This is a difference that learners often question. Why do we use in for one vehicle and on for another? There is no simple answer. English just works this way. Some prepositions also change meaning based on the situation. For example, in can mean different things. In the room is one meaning. In trouble is another. You see, prepositions are very flexible. They depend on the context. This can make them difficult to learn. Prepositions also help to describe how actions happen. For example, she walked to the park. The preposition here is to. It shows direction. Prepositions can show movement, like through, across, or toward. These words give more details about where something is going or where it is. Now, think about phrasal verbs. They are also difficult for learners. Phrasal verbs are combinations of a verb and a preposition. For example, turn off means to stop something, like a light, but turn on means the opposite. The prepositions change the meaning of the verb completely. Learning these phrasal verbs takes practice. Here is another example of a phrasal verb. Pick up. This means to lift something. But if we say pick out, it means to choose something. These small changes can confuse learners. And they are very common in everyday English. The good news is that with practice, you can get better at using prepositions. The key is to listen and read in English. The more you hear and see prepositions, the easier it will become. Watch videos, listen to podcasts, and read books or articles. This will help you remember how prepositions are used. English teachers often say to learn prepositions in phrases. Don't just learn the word in by itself. Learn in the house, in the car, in the park. This way, you will start to see how prepositions are used in different situations. You can learn them as part of a larger phrase. Another tip is to practice speaking. Use prepositions in your daily conversations. Even if you make mistakes, that's okay. The more you practice, the better you will get. It is important to make mistakes and learn from them. In the next section, we will dive deeper into common prepositions. We will also talk about how to use them correctly in different situations. Prepositions might be tricky, but you can master them. Keep practicing and don't give up. Thank you for listening to the first part of this podcast. Stay tuned for the next section. Let's continue. Now, we'll look at some of the most common prepositions. These are words you will use every day. Let's start with in. This one is very important. You will see it used a lot. It is used for places, time, and situations. We use in for large areas. For example, in a city, in a country, or in a room. It shows something is inside a space. You can also use in for time, like in the morning, in the afternoon, or in 2025. It tells us when something happens. You can also use in for certain expressions. For example, in trouble, in love, or in a hurry. These phrases have special meanings. Next, let's talk about on. We use on when something is touching a surface. For example, on the table, on the wall, or on the floor. It can also be used for transportation, like on the bus or on the plane. These are things that you are riding. You can also use on for time, like on Monday, on Christmas, or on the weekend. Now let's look at. We use at for specific locations and times. For example, at the door, at the store, or at school. It tells us a point or a specific place. You also use at for time. For example, at 3 o'clock or at night. It tells us the exact time when something happens. By is another preposition. It is used when something is near or beside something else. For example, by the window, by the door, or by the river. It also means something was done in a certain way, like by train or by car. It shows the method of transportation. Let's talk about to now. We use to show direction or movement. For example, I am going to the park, or she is traveling to Paris. To shows the place you are moving towards. It can also be used for time, like from 2 to 5 o'clock. Another common preposition is for. We use for to show purpose or reason. For example, this gift is for you, or I am waiting for the bus. It tells us the reason behind an action. You can also use for to talk about time, like for an hour or for a week. It shows how long something lasts. Let's not forget about with. We use with to show a connection. For example, I am with my friends, or she is talking with her sister. It tells us who or what someone is doing something with. You can also use with for tools like cut with a knife or write with a pen. Under is another important preposition. It tells us something is below something else. For example, under the table, under the bed, or under the bridge. It can also show a situation. For example, under pressure or under the weather. These phrases have special meanings, and they don't always make sense when translated literally. Over is similar to under, but it means above. For example, the lamp is over the table, or the bird is flying over the city. It can also mean more than when talking about numbers. For example, there were over 100 people at the party. Between is used to talk about two things. For example, I am standing between the two chairs, or the book is between the two boxes. It shows something in the middle of 2 points. We also use between for choices, like between blue and green, or between working and studying. Finally, let's talk about. We use about when talking about a topic. For example, this book is about animals, or we are talking about prepositions. It shows what something is related to. It can also be used to talk about time. For example, I will arrive in about 10 minutes. These are just a few examples of the most common prepositions. There are many more, and they can be tricky. The best way to learn them is through practice. The more you use prepositions, the easier they will become. You will start to feel more comfortable with them as you hear them in conversations, movies, or podcasts. One more thing to remember is that prepositions don't always translate directly from other languages. So, don't worry if you make mistakes. It's part of the learning process. Keep practicing, and over time, you will become better at using prepositions in English. In the next section, we will look at how prepositions are used in different phrases. These phrases are important for everyday conversations. They will help you sound more natural in English. Keep listening, and we will explore more about prepositions. Now, let's focus on how prepositions are used in common phrases. These phrases will help you understand how to use prepositions in real-life situations. We'll look at different examples to make it easier for you. One of the most important things to remember is that prepositions are often used in set expressions. These are fixed phrases that native speakers use all the time. For example, at home, on time, and in trouble. You can't always change the preposition in these expressions. They just sound natural in English. If you want to sound like a native speaker, learning these phrases is key. Let's start with at. We often use at for specific places. For example, at work, at school, or at the office. You'll use at when you talk about a point or location. Also, we use at when talking about events or activities like at a party, at a concert, or at a meeting. These are places or situations where something happens. We also use at for time. You say at 5 o'clock, at noon, or at night. When you want to give the exact time something will happen, at is the preposition to use. It's always for a specific moment or event. Next, let's look at on. We use on for surfaces, as in on the table, on the floor, or on the roof. It shows that something is touching the surface. We also use on for transportation, like on the bus, on the train, or on the plane. These are places where you travel on top of something, not inside. You can also use on to talk about time. For example, on Monday, on Christmas Day, or on the weekend. These are dates or periods when something happens. You can also use on in expressions like on time or on schedule, meaning something happens as planned. Now, let's talk about in. We use in for larger areas like cities, countries, and rooms. For example, in Paris, in the kitchen, or in the car. When you are inside something, like a place or a space, use in. We also use in for time, like in the morning, in January, or in 2025. This shows a larger period or part of the day. Another common phrase is in a hurry. This means you are rushing to do something. For example, I'm in a hurry to catch the bus. In trouble is another example. If you are in trouble, it means something bad has happened. For example, he is in trouble with his teacher. Let's look at to. To is often used for direction or movement. For example, I am going to the store, or she is walking to school. It shows where you are heading. You can also use to for time, like from 3 to 5 o'clock. This shows a time range or movement from one point to another. Here is another common preposition, with. We use with when talking about people or things you are together with. For example, I am with my friends, or she is talking with her parents. It shows who you are doing something with. You can also use with when talking about tools or objects. For example, I cut the paper with scissors. How about for? For shows purpose or reason. For example, this gift is for you, or I am waiting for the bus. It shows what something is meant to do. You can also use for to talk about time. For example, I've lived here for 2 years, or I will be here for an hour. It tells how long something lasts. Another useful phrase is under the weather. If you are under the weather, it means you are not feeling well. It's a way to talk about being sick or ill. For example, I can't go to work today. I'm feeling under the weather. We also use over for something above or higher than something else. For example, the picture is over the sofa, or the plane is flying over the city. It shows something above or higher up. You can also use over for numbers like over 100 people or over $50. It means more than a certain amount. Another useful phrase is between when talking about two things. For example, the ball is between the two chairs, or the choice is between chocolate and vanilla. It shows a point in the middle of two options or things. About is often used to talk about topics or subjects. For example, this book is about animals, or we are talking about English prepositions. It shows what something is related to. It's a very common preposition in conversations. Lastly, we have by. This is used to show how something is done. For example, I go to work by car, or I sent the letter by email. It shows the method of transportation or communication. We also use by for location, like by the beach or by the lake. It means next to or near something. These are just some of the common prepositional phrases you will use. When you learn these phrases, it will help you speak more naturally in English. Keep practicing with them. Over time, you will feel more confident using prepositions in your conversations. Thank you for listening to this podcast. You are doing great. Keep learning, and remember that prepositions are important in English. With practice, you'll get better at using them. Stay tuned for more tips and advice on learning English.